Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, World Alternative Media here, and of course we're joined by author and economic analyst here, I'm John Sneisen, and we are going to do a series on many of the things that have come out of the 2018 Canadian budget. It's mind-numbing, it's terrible, and we're going to tell you about it, but in a much more entertaining way and a much more factual way because, with all the bureaucratic mumbo-jumbo, John, it's difficult to understand what in the hell they're talking about.
The budget will balance itself, Josh.
Yeah, of course, it always balances itself. Unfortunately, there's far too much centralization for that to happen. And, back in April 2016, we reported on the Panama Papers, which was a nonsense push by, with funding from the Open Society Foundation, etc., to basically say, taxation, we need to pay taxes. It's our responsibility because my roads and all that kind of craziness. And, taxation is theft. Let's get that straight. But as part of it, we talked in the report in April 2016 about how this will be used in order to create an international taxation ring and a way to tax everyone equally by the hand of the UN, IMF, etc.
Yeah, we showed the documents from the working group that was in 2011, and it was the UN, the BIS, the OECD, the IMF, and I forgot there was one, the G20. So yeah, they're all colluding.
Yeah, and there's a lot of collusion everywhere. In this short report just on this part of the Canadian budget is, well, we keep getting proven right over and over again, vindication, etc. In, I believe it was November 2016, we were proven right with the BEPS. And
it came out, yeah, they started reporting on it in media. Very few though, but yeah, they were reporting that there was 100 signatories to this tax treaty.
Yeah, can you explain what BEPS is quickly before we get into how it's implemented in the Canadian budget?
Yeah, well, BEPS is what's called base erosion and profit shifting. So what that means is that big evil corporations are trying to hide all their money overseas. So we need all the countries in the world to cooperate and file their taxes that they have locally to everybody else and share with CRA, for example, get shared, from every single country. So there's nowhere to hide. That's all that it goes into. It's very simple. That's all that it is. And it's supposed to be after these multilateral corporations, the big bad guys. But then, of course, when you look at it and how they talk about it, of course, it's going to apply to every single person around.
Yeah, and of course, government's main prerogative is to steal from people, kidnap people if they refuse to be stolen from, and murder them if they try to run away. Basically animals to the slaughter, sheep on a farm. And a lot of people will eat the grass and they say, well, everything's so amazing because I get to eat my grass. I'm so free, until they get let off by the chain to the slaughter. And this BEPS situation is unfolding, unfortunately, rather fast, and it's in the new Canadian 2018 budget. And we're just going to go into this post that John actually did on Steemit, where he goes into how it'll be implemented, and just going into what he wrote here: combating aggressive international tax avoidance, strengthening Canada's international tax rules. The government is also taking action to fight aggressive international tax avoidance by introducing measures to protect the integrity and improve the fairness of Canada's fairness in quotations of Canada's international tax system. This system includes rules to prevent taxpayers from avoiding Canadian income tax by shifting property income into foreign resident corporations. It also includes rules aimed at ensuring that non-residents pay their fair share of tax on income derived from Canadian sources.
Fair share, Josh.
Yeah, of course, it's so fair to steal money from people. What will the government do without the ability to have a mob, organized crime racket going around the planet, putting guns to people's heads saying, you better pay your fair share, so we can monopolize major corporations and then use that monopolization as a reason to put in more regulations which further monopolizes them. We need our carbon tax. We need all that to promote or, monopolize major oil corporations and major globalist corporations that make tons of money off the government anyway. Going further into it, to strengthen Canada's international tax rules, the government is proposing measures to ensure that these rules cannot be avoided through the use of so-called tracking arrangements, which allow taxpayers to track to their specific benefit the return from assets that they contribute to a foreign resident corporation, and prevent unintended tax-free distributions by Canadian corporations to non-resident shareholders through the use of certain transactions involving partnership and trusts. Update on international tax avoidance, base erosion, and profit shifting, and it goes on. The government is committed to safeguarding Canada's tax system and has been an active participant in the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development Group of 20 OECD/G20 project to address both the inappropriate shifting of profit offshore and other international planning to avoid tax by corporations and some wealthy individuals, known as a Base Erosion and Profit Shifting Initiative. The government will continue to work with its international partners to improve international dispute resolutions and to ensure a coherent and consistent response to fighting cross-border tax avoidance. And it's very interesting how they call it inappropriate. So it's totally fair and totally appropriate to steal people's money and tax them to death in order to fund, wars and perpetuation of wars and protect the monetary system, which has created vast amounts of poverty by creating more vast amounts of, poverty. It's just absolutely insane. We have the carbon tax, we have the business taxes, income taxes, GST, PST, in some places MST. We got the, eco taxes, we got the property taxes, we got the capital gains taxes. You better not make money with Bitcoin, because how dare you fuel a monetary revolution without a shop being fired? It's just, this is in the end probably going to go against them. It's going to lead people more away from fiat, more away from government, because individuals intrinsically decentralized throughout history, while governments all the time constantly centralize more and more and more, which eventually leads to revolutions. So yeah, keep it up, guys. What do you think, John?
Well, what we've been talking about all the time here at World Alternative Media, so many times we talk about this United Nations global racket that are trying to implement this world government, if you can, a lot of people call it the New World Order. They are really trying to push hard now. And the Base Erosion and Profit Shifting Plan is the global tax. It is the global tax that are getting implemented. And as I say in my title here, Canada implements global tax racket. United Nations taxation is theft. So that's what it is all about. It's about the United Nations and how they are planning to steal our money through these little corporations, international tax corporation between each other. It's just more money to fund the big global government that they are, creating behind everybody's back that have not been elected. Nobody there is accountable to anybody anywhere, and they're just creating more and more organizations everywhere in order to implement as the system fail. We talk about that all the time, how the monetary system is failing. Well, they have a solution, and that's this whole racket that they put together with the United Nations. And I highly suggest you read, of course, Deirdre Griffin's book, the Fearful Master. Highly that you should read that, because it's so important to understand what the United Nations is. Because if you don't, look at the Canadian, we're going to talk about some other things in the Canadian budget that they actually are talking about that are United Nations policies. It's starting to really come out like full force right into our face, but nobody understands what it is. So we're going to expose them. We're going to talk about it. And this whole tax, BEPS system it's just a massive fraud again.
Yeah, and it's one thing for a majority to enforce its will on the minority, which is democracy, but it's even worse, the idea that it's really just a small minority of bureaucrats enforcing their will on almost everyone and at gunpoint, and it's terrible. And, talking about the New World Order and all that kind of stuff, check out our videos, The Many Tentacles of Globalism, where we go into how the United Nations affects basically every country in the world and all their tentacles that trickle down into every country and how they affected from all these different departments and branches of the United Nations. And then, of course, we talked about the cashless system that's being unveiled and pushed into the special drawing rights at the IMF to create a global currency. This is not conspiracy theory anymore, folks. This is at one point conspiracy theory, I guess you could call it, decades ago. But, it has a bad name on it now. It has a bad rap. It's the fact of the matter is this is happening. It's recorded throughout history. It's recorded in government documentation and United Nations documentation. The only question is, will they succeed or will they not? And that depends on you as an educated individual. Of course, I confronted Justin Trudeau last year on the carbon tax, because it's basically a tax on everything. It's basically every single import and export tax, and it's just on top of the hidden tax of inflation, and then all the other taxes, sales taxes, everything. We are dealing with something that's absolutely unbelievable here, that is really coercive and really affecting every single individual, whether rich or poor. It doesn't matter. Rich people bring jobs and employment and production and etc. and great innovation to the market for the poor to get jobs and get out of poverty and grow in their opportunities. And then, of course, We see, with the carbon tax, this massive attack on big businesses and small businesses combined, and this attack on individuals that just need to go to the store and get food for their family. And as I went into with Justin Trudeau, I asked him at a press conference last year, where I called him a scumbag. Basically, I asked him, how do you justify people having to choose between feeding their families and heating their homes in the winter? Because it's true. People are forced into this, basically this little hole, this little pigeonhole, and the government's saying, well, it's for the greater good of the greater number. That old mantra of collectivism that G. Edward Griffin has thoroughly debunked thousands of times throughout the last 60 years. John, this is just getting more and more coercive all the time. We will go further into all the other things that are, implemented into this 2018 budget at another time. Of course, we'll go into bail-ins and, all that craziness, journalism, how it affects.
2030.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's your bottom line here, John?
Well, my bottom line is I just want to talk about, because this infuriates me very bad. Like I get really mad when I see this. The title of the budget in 2018 is Equality Growth, a Strong Middle Class.
What middle class?
Well, yeah, exactly. They're destroying the middle class while they're saying a strong middle class. It's doublespeak, right? It's the complete opposite of what they're doing. With the carbon tax, they're completely eviscerating the middle class, because the middle class getting taxed to death, because that's who the government feeds upon. They leech upon the middle class because they make the most amount of money, because the rich, they write the taxes, so they don't pay too much. And then you have the poor, they don't have money to pay taxes. So it's the middle class. I'm one of them, and I get really sick and pissed off at this government, sucking money out of my pocket every time I do my tax return. And very soon we're going to see this government fall, and I'm going to be very excited.
Yeah, absolutely. They always say the rich get richer, but in reality, we're seeing the middle class become the lower class and losing money and going into poverty and going into debt. And a populace in debt is a populace in servitude. And I mean, just looking at the veneer, the facade on this website showing equality and growth, a strong middle class, and it shows, a little Asian girl running, mixed race girl. Like, they're trying to push this idea of, equality and multiculturalism and diversity under the guise of, all of this, while actually in reality impoverishing us. Nothing against, the mixed race or any of that, but it's a fact that they use that. They use children like old Soviet Russia. They use children like old Maoist China. They use children like the Cuban Revolution in order to, push this forward, while they're killing children, while they're pushing them in poverty, while they're destroying their future under the guise of helping one another and equality and, diversity. It's absolutely insane. And at the same time, diversity of thought and diversity of income and diversity of opinion is being stomped and shoved into a shallow grave, and it's absolutely disgusting, John.
Yeah, with the monetary fraud, with the government fraud, they're creating rich and poor, not the middle class that they're talking about, creating a strong middle class. It's bullshit. We're going to expose Murnau, we're going to expose Trudeau, and this BS budget, because that's what it is. It's just a whole bunch of little kids, playing around. It's like, oh yeah, let's make something fun, little project on the side, and that's what this is. It's not an actual budget. What they need to do is they need to dismantle the Canadian government before they are creating a totalitarian state, because that's where we're going.
And we're already kind of there, and it's just growing out all the time. Government always grows. Collectivism always begets more collectivism. And in the end, we need a debt jubilee and the end to this whole system.
Yeah, and just to finish off this report, because this fires us up, because we unfortunately we live in Canada and we have to experience all this. I highly suggest you read my book, because this is what I'm talking about. What is happening currently with the whole system, how it's starting to fall apart. Start to understand it. You need to understand how and what they do, and I highly suggest you get into my book, because there I put forward my opinion on the whole government. So
yeah, absolutely. Canada, the greatest economy in the world, ? Up on Amazon.com. And also don't forget to check out The End of Freedom, How Our Monetary System Enslaves Us, also by John, up on Amazon. Let's get this information out. Let's keep pushing this forward, because we are coming to the inevitable end of the fiat empire and the markets that have been so incredibly manipulated by governments and banks. And it's a time that we as individuals individuals think for ourselves and look towards self-sustainability and financial responsibility and get educated, because responsibility is a hallmark of freedom itself, and without it, we've basically got nothing. We are enslaved on the cattle farm for the government and the banks to take advantage of us and shove us into debt servitude. They shove you down a bottomless pit of debt, and you're forced to ask for a ladder up from the government and the banking system, and that is perfect servitude. That's exactly where they want you. They benefit. You are basically led to the slaughter. So thanks for going into all this with us, John, and until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson and John Sneisen signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change. Like what you see here, don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we are so vastly demonetized and censored by YouTube, as the ADL comes in and flags all of our content as hate speech. You can also find our Bitcoin address in the description as well as on the screen for you to scan, if you please. And don't forget to find us at Josh Sigurdson at steemit.com. That's steemit.com, the future of social media, where you get paid in the upvote of your post in cryptocurrency, Steem that is. So don't forget to find us there, and until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.